step away from that vehicle.
It's my car. I'm just loading groceries.
We got a call about someone breaking into cars. You matched the description.
I literally just walked out of the store. I can show you my receipt.
A receipt proves nothing. Don't reach for
Then
anything.
how am I supposed to
You're
show you
being
registration?
uncooperative. I might need backup.
Back for a federal prosecutor putting food in his own...
So, sir, step away from that vehicle. The voice cut through the summer heat like a command meant for someone else. James Mitchell froze with one hand on a reusable grocery bag, the other hovering near the open trunk of his BMW. He turned slowly, careful, because he'd seen enough bodycam footage in his career to know how quickly a normal moment could become a catastrophe. "It's my car," James said, keeping his hands visible. "I'm just loading groceries." The officer, Nathan Cross, stood behind a patrol car, positioned tight to James's rear bumper, lights flashing, effectively trapping the BMW in place. Cross's posture was practiced. Squared shoulders, one hand near his weapon, eyes locked on James like he'd already decided the ending. "We got a call about someone breaking into cars," Cross said. "You match the description." "I literally just walked out of the store," James replied. He nodded toward the brown paper bags and the bright, unmistakable Whole Foods logo. "My receipt is right there." "A receipt proves nothing," Cross snapped. "Don't reach for anything." James stared for half a second, trying to reconcile the absurdity with the danger. In his mind, the law was clear. The Constitution was clear. Fourth Amendment, reasonable suspicion, probable cause. But none of that mattered if the man holding the gun didn't care. Cross took one step closer. "You're being uncooperative. I might need backup." Before we go any further, if you're new here and you want more real stories like this, hit subscribe. These are the kinds of moments that get buried, minimized, or rewritten after the fact. And the only reason they surface is because people keep sharing them. Let's continue with the story. In that moment, something inside James went cold. Not fear exactly, but recognition. He'd prosecuted criminals for 15 years. He'd prosecuted officers too. He knew what an unlawful stop looked like, how it started, how it escalated, and how quickly it could ruin a life. The irony was sharp enough to taste. Because James Mitchell wasn't a suspect. He was a federal prosecutor. And Officer Nathan Cross, 18 years with the Atlanta Police Department, had been telling the same story for nearly 2 decades. The kind of story supervisors should have stopped letting him repeat years earlier. Cross had accumulated 22 complaints in 18 years. 19 of those complaints involved stops of black professionals in affluent Atlanta neighborhoods. Buckhead, Virginia Highland, Morningside. The same pattern, different day. A successful black person in a place Cross mentally labeled as not theirs, and Cross turning that discomfort into suspicion. The complaints read like a loop that never broke. An architect leaving an office building in Buckhead detained for 40 minutes, while Cross verified he belonged there. A pediatrician searched in a Virginia Highland parking lot while holding a receipt for her own groceries. A college professor walking his dog in Morningside questioned about residential burglary because Cross decided his presence didn't fit the neighborhood. Each complaint ended the same way: mandatory retraining, workshops, seminars, certificates, a system that treated a pattern like a misunderstanding. Cross attended. Cross nodded. Cross went right back to doing what he'd always done. Internal Affairs had a file thick enough to end his career a decade earlier. But Cross had allies, supervisors who liked his stop numbers and the way his proactive policing looked on paper, union protection, administrative politics, a department that, in practice, valued the appearance of control more than accountability. That Saturday afternoon in June, the collision finally happened. Between Cross's unchecked bias and a man whose daily job was putting criminals in prison. And the consequences would be immediate. Cross's career would end. The city would pay $4.2 million, and Atlanta PD would be forced to answer a question they'd avoided for years. How many warning signs does a department need before it stops pretending not to see them? The setting could not have been more ordinary. Atlanta, Georgia. Virginia Highland, tree-lined streets, historic bungalows, trendy restaurants, and a Whole Foods where the parking lot looked like a showroom for new SUVs and polished sedans. It was 2:45 p.m. The air hovered around 88 degrees, the kind of heat that made loading groceries feel like a race against sweat. James Mitchell had done this same routine dozens of times. Park, shop, pay, load, go home. He'd spent 40 minutes inside picking out produce, meat, pantry staples, nothing special, just food for the week. He pushed the cart out, popped his trunk, and started transferring bags into the cargo area, stacking them carefully so nothing would slide during the drive. His BMW was 3 years old. Nice, but not flashy. Registered in his name. Insured. Legal in every possible way. James was in his mid-50s, calm, focused on the mundane task of groceries. Phone tucked away, mind half on dinner plans. No crime, no violation, no suspicious behavior, just a man putting food into his car. But then Nathan Cross rolled into the lot. Dispatch had mentioned a caller, someone who thought they saw a person checking car door handles. The description was vague, soaked in assumption. Black male, mid-50s, nice car. The caller wasn't sure anything was happening, but wanted police to check it out. For Cross, that was enough. He scanned the lot and found what he was looking for. A black man near an expensive vehicle. In Cross's head, the calculation happened automatically, the way it had happened in every complaint file for 18 years. Black man, affluent context. Something must be wrong. If the car is nice, it must be stolen. If he's here, he must be up to something. Cross didn't see the Whole Foods bags. He didn't see the receipt. He didn't see a routine moment. He saw a scenario his bias had rehearsed 1,000 times. He pulled his patrol car directly behind the BMW, blocking it in, then lit up the lights like he'd just intercepted a felony. James noticed the reflection in his rearview mirror before he heard the command. His stomach tightened. Not because he'd done anything, but because he knew the feeling. Being treated like a problem in your own neighborhood. "Sir, step away from that vehicle." James turned, hands open, voice controlled. "This is my car. I'm loading groceries." "We got a call about someone breaking into cars," Cross said. "You match the description." "Breaking into cars," James repeated, a trace of disbelief slipping in. "Officer, I just came out of the store. I have groceries. My receipt is right there." "A receipt proves nothing," Cross said. "Whose car is this?" "It's mine," James answered. "The registration is in the glove box." Cross stepped closer. "Keep your hands where I can see them. Don't reach for anything." James let out a slow breath. "How am I supposed to show you registration if I can't reach for it?" "You're being difficult," Cross said, as if James's basic logic was a threat. "I need backup here." That's when James's professional instincts took over. He'd spent 15 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Northern District of Georgia. He'd handled everything from white-collar fraud to public corruption to civil rights violations. He'd argued in the 11th Circuit. He'd trained younger prosecutors. Colleagues called him meticulous. Supervisors called him relentless. Defense attorneys called him formidable. He believed in the system when it was done properly. He also knew how often it wasn't. "Officer," James said evenly, "I'm a federal prosecutor. I work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm loading groceries into my own car. There's no crime here, no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion. What you're doing is an unlawful stop." Cross's face didn't soften. If anything, it hardened. Federal prosecutor, Cross said, almost amused. Sure, I've heard that before. I'm serious, James replied. My name is James Mitchell. I'm an assistant United States attorney. I've been prosecuting federal cases for 15 years, including civil rights violations. And what you're doing right now is a textbook Fourth Amendment problem. If you're really a federal prosecutor, Cross said, prove it. My credentials are in my car, James said. In the center console. But you just told me not to reach for anything. Cross's eyes stayed fixed. Slowly remove your credentials. Any sudden movements and this situation changes. That sentence carried weight. James understood it for what it was. A threat wrapped in procedure. Officer, James said, voice steady. I'm going to reach into my car now. My movements will be slow and deliberate. I'm getting my federal credentials from the center console. He turned slowly, opened the driver's door, reached in, and pulled out a leather credential case. He turned back and held it out. Open. A badge. A photo ID. Official Department of Justice identification. Cross glanced at it like it was a prop. Could be fake, Cross said. For a moment, James just stared, genuinely stunned. Fake federal credentials? Cross didn't back off. I'm just being thorough. No, James said, heat finally breaking through his restraint. You're profiling. You saw a black man with an expensive car and decided something must be wrong. You didn't see the grocery bags. You didn't consider that I might just be shopping. You assumed criminality because you can't imagine a black man legitimately owning a BMW? Cross lifted his radio. Dispatch, I need a supervisor and another unit at Whole Foods on North Highland. I have a subject refusing to cooperate. James reached for his own phone. And I'm calling my office, he said, because what you're doing is unlawful detention. Minutes later, another patrol car arrived, then a supervisor's vehicle. Sergeant Denise Harmon stepped out, 26 years on the job, no illusions left. She'd read Cross's complaint file. She'd recommended discipline more than once and watched it get buried under politics and paperwork. She approached and immediately saw the scene for what it was. A man beside a BMW loaded with Whole Foods bags. Federal credentials sitting on the hood like evidence in a case that should never have existed. Cross, Harmon said sharply. What's happening here? Possible vehicle tampering, Cross said. Subject's story doesn't add up. Harmon picked up the credentials and examined them carefully. The holographic seal, the security features, the photograph matching James's face. These are real, she said flatly. He could have stolen them, Cross insisted. Harmon's eyes narrowed. Cross, you don't steal Department of Justice credentials and just stroll into Whole Foods to tamper with cars in broad daylight. She turned to James. Sir, I'm Sergeant Harmon. I apologize for this. Can you tell me what happened? James explained. Calm, precise, like he was presenting facts in court. He'd parked, shopped, paid, loaded groceries. Cross pulled up, blocked him in, accused him of breaking into cars, dismissed the receipt, dismissed the registration, dismissed federal credentials, and escalated anyway. Harmon ran the BMW plates on her mobile terminal. Registered to James Mitchell at an address in Virginia Highland. Everything matched, everything legitimate, no crime, no reasonable suspicion, just assumption. Harmon looked at Cross with barely contained anger. He's a federal prosecutor. This is his car. These are his groceries. There's no crime here. There never was. The call said, Cross started. I don't care what the call said, Harmon snapped. You're supposed to investigate, not assume. Do you understand what you've just done? As Harmon spoke, witnesses began to drift closer. A woman from a nearby car raised her hand slightly, cautious but firm. Excuse me, officers. I saw this whole thing. That man was just putting his groceries away. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Why was he stopped? An elderly white man joined her. I've been watching. He came out with a cart full of bags and loaded them into his car. That's it. Why is he being detained? Harmon radioed for a captain. Within 10 minutes, Captain Robert Chin arrived. 30 years on the force, and he'd been pushing for Cross's termination for years. Each time, union pressure and internal politics had blocked it. Chin listened to Harmon's briefing, spoke to James, spoke to the witnesses, and reviewed the terminal confirmation that the car was registered to James. Then he turned to Cross with an expression that wasn't anger so much as finality. "Badge and weapon," Chin said. Cross blinked. "Captain, I was responding to a call." "You stopped a federal prosecutor for loading groceries into his registered vehicle," Chin replied, voice controlled. "You accused him of vehicle tampering with zero evidence. You called his federal credentials fake. You've been doing this for 18 years, and it ends today. Badge, weapon, now." Cross's face drained of color. His hands shook as he handed them over. Chin turned to James. "Mr. Mitchell, on behalf of Atlanta PD, I apologize. This was completely inappropriate. Officer Cross will be placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Between you and me, his career is over. If you choose to file a complaint or pursue legal action, the department will cooperate." James looked at Cross, then back at Chin. "Captain," he said, "this isn't my first time being profiled. It's not even my first time this year. But it is the first time a police officer has done it while I was doing something as mundane as grocery shopping in my own neighborhood." He gestured toward the security cameras mounted high on the building. "I prosecute federal cases. I've sent people to prison for civil rights violations. And Officer Cross just committed one in front of witnesses and cameras." His voice didn't rise, but the force of it landed. "So yes," James continued, "I'll be filing a complaint. And yes, I'll be pursuing legal action. Because if this can happen to me, a federal prosecutor who knows the law, imagine what happens to people who don't have my resources or knowledge." By that evening, the story moved fast through Atlanta's legal community and into the news cycle. A federal prosecutor detained while grocery shopping. A city officer stops an assistant U.S. attorney for loading food into his own car. Witnesses describe an unlawful stop in a Whole Foods parking lot. The U.S. Attorney's Office issued a statement supporting James. The Georgia Association of Black Lawyers condemned the incident. Defense attorneys who'd battled James in court publicly defended him. Judges expressed concern. The story wasn't just about one stop. It was about the 18 years that came before it, and the 22 complaints the department had treated like paperwork instead of warnings. James hired a civil rights attorney, though he could have written much of the complaint himself. 6 weeks later, the lawsuit was filed. It named Officer Nathan Cross. It named supervisors who had ignored the pattern. And it named a department that had tolerated it long enough for the cost to become inevitable. Cross's career ended the way it should have ended years earlier. Not in a quiet transfer, not in another retraining, but in public, with witnesses, cameras, and a man who knew exactly how to hold the system accountable. And that is the part that should haunt you. Not because a federal prosecutor was targeted, because he had the knowledge and position to fight back, but because if the system was willing to do this to him in broad daylight, in a busy parking lot, in a neighborhood he lived in, then the question isn't whether it happens. The question is how often it happens when there isn't a badge on the hood to force the truth into the open. If you've ever wondered what unchecked bias looks like in real life, it looks like a man putting groceries into his own car and being treated like a criminal anyway. And if you think an officer with 20-plus complaints should still be on patrol. I want you to say why. If you think the department failed long before this Saturday afternoon, say that too. Either way, the conversation matters, because silence is where patterns survive.